Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Trip4ndF1all episode 4 of the podcast. Yep, I think, yeah, episode 4. So this episode's going to be a little different, where I do something that maybe could be better in another format, but I just think podcast, it's easier. It's easier, you know. Low effort. That's low effort and scuffed, which is what I'm all about. So, to preface a little, what I'm going to be doing today, a while ago, I think it was a tweet or a YouTube video about, it was probably a tweet, I think, about, this idea of having a fantasy draft, because I thought that was interesting because I'm a big fan of NBA, where fantasy drafts are a bit more common because drafts are common. So like, you get a lot of fantasy draft talk. So fantasy draft in F1 was interesting, but I kind of didn't agree with it. I can't remember why, but it was like, oh no, I don't know. And I thought I could do better. So I made a 2021 fantasy draft, which I'm going to show you first. But I also wanted to do something similar with the 2023 lineup. So do a fantasy draft, start all over with teams having all, to be able to choose their two different drivers in a draft style format. I'll explain the rules after. But first, I want to just quickly show my 2021 fantasy draft selections, because I made this, I think it must have been 2020, like towards the end, but also I think close enough that teams like, I think McLaren ended up higher than Aston Martin in the 2020 standings, so this is a bit different. But yeah, if anybody doesn't know how fantasy drafts work, it's reverse championship order at the time. So I don't know how the constructors was looking. Well, this is how the constructors were looking at the time. I don't know how different it was to the final 2020 standings, but I probably did about the same time 2 years ago. So yeah. Anyways, so it's a snake style draft. Reverse championship order until you get up to number 10, where everybody select, then it's in championship order. So reverses halfway through. The two drivers, of course. And yeah. Just a quick overview if you're an audio listener or you're just listening to the podcast rather than looking. I've got a quick notepad, very scuffed, but whatever, of the 2021 fantasy draft, and let me just read out what we've got. Williams, Max Verstappen. Second, Haas, Charles Leclerc. Third, Alfa Romeo, Lewis Hamilton. Fourth, AlphaTauri, Dan Ricciardo. Fifth, Ferrari, Valtteri Bottas. Sixth, Alpine, Sebastian Vettel. 7, McLaren, Sergio Perez. 8, Aston Martin, Carlos Sainz. 9, Red Bull, George Russell. 10, Mercedes, Pierre Gasly. 11, Mercedes, Lando Norris. 12, Red Bull, Lance Stroll, butcher that. 13, Aston Martin, Alex Albon. 14, McLaren, Mick Schumacher. 15, Alpine, Nico Hulkenberg. 16, Ferrari, Esteban Ocon. 17, AlphaTauri, Fernando Alonso. 18, Alfa Romeo, Callum Ilott. 19, Haas, Yuki Tsunoda. 20, Williams, Antonio Giovinazzi. So this is giving us some lineups of Mercedes, Pierre Gasly, Lando Norris. Red Bull, George Russell, Lance Stroll. Aston Martin, Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon. McLaren, Sergio Perez, Mick Schumacher. Alpine, Sebastian Vettel. and Nico Hülkenberg, Ferrari, Valtteri Bottas, and Esteban Ocon, AlphaTauri, Daniel Ricciardo, and Fernando Alonso, Alfa Romeo, Lewis Hamilton, and Callum Ilott. Haas was Charles Leclerc and Yuki Tsunoda, and Williams was Max Verstappen and Antonio Giovinazzi. I'll do a quick little, quick explanation of some of my picks and what I'll change. But first, I found some of the pairings that obviously I at random chose. I didn't, for this fantasy draft, I didn't look at pairings, for example. I don't think who would they need based on who they've got, which is kind of what you do in, say, an NBA or an NFL fantasy draft, where you look at, what positions do we need filled? Your first pick might be whoever's the best pick, but then you might go, second pick, again, well, the next best player that is available is good, but he would fill the same role or position as, yeah. So that's something I didn't think of, which, again, would be a fault, because probably they would be looking, a lot of teams would be looking at whether they want maybe their driver to be a second driver or a young driver. Do you want to, again, depends, are they competing, are they not? There's a lot of factors. But anyways, I found a lot of the pairings quite interesting. Mercedes, for example, not really, again, more of a Lando Norris is young, Pierre Gasly a bit older, so you've got someone who who's ready to compete. Then in a few years' time, Lando Norris might step up. That'll be interesting. But I also found it, and a few of these observations are just little stupid things. With Mercedes, it was that as the French and British combine, the combination, which is hey, if you don't know the history, but I imagine you do. Even Red Bull, they've replaced Max Verstappen with George Russell. Got a new Wonder Boy, poached the other Wonder Boy. Why not? Aston Martin, interesting as well. Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon, I think they fit the brand, I feel, a little. Carlos Sainz being obviously having that certain swagger, I feel like, the smooth operator. You could see him driving an Aston Martin. I think the same thing with Alex Albon a little, obviously he's got the red hair. He's, I think he probably doesn't fit the brand as well, but I think he does a little. Another one, Alpine, which was interesting. Quite old. Obviously Vettel in 2021, not too bad, but still, when you combine that with Nico Hülkenberg, it's not a team that's really built for the future. If I had to change that, I'd probably pick maybe someone a bit younger. Maybe Alpine. What's the next young driver on the board? Callum Ilott, maybe. Maybe he doesn't deserve to go that high up, but maybe he's a bit better with the pairing. You're looking at Sebastian Vettel might do well now, same as Nico Hülkenberg, but what happens when you, whatever. Even AlphaTauri, again, considering AlphaTauri is meant to be the young team, the young Red Bull team, Daniel Ricciardo, Fernando Alonso, you both, well, at this point, Alonso would have been 40, I think. And then you've got someone in their 30s, it's by far the oldest AlphaTauri lineup there has been. One of the oldest lineups on the grid I've seen for quite a while, to be honest. Has there been any older? No, I can't. If you maybe Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas, Sebastian Vettel, and Kimi Räikkönen, but even then, Vettel and Bottas were quite a bit younger, and obviously Lewis Hamilton isn't that old, but you know, he's getting up there. Daniel Ricciardo and Fernando Alonso, you know, not looking, then that's not quite their objective, I don't think, with the getting those two on board in a junior team. But it is the best probably that was on the board. And honestly, yeah, Hassan Williams, interesting as well. Alfa Romeo, I found to be an interesting one as well. Lewis Hamilton, obviously, you know, will drive fairly well for the next few years. But then you've got a prodigy in Callum Ilott, a really young guy, you know, coming into the sport. I would think that would be interesting in that, as long as Lewis is not too concentrated on, you know, winning, he could be the mentor. That would be interesting to see if Lewis could be the mentor a bit, or it would just be full on, we are teammates. No, you know, I don't know. And is Callum, hold on, is Callum Ilott? Let me just check one thing real quick. I think Callum Ilott's British, isn't he? Yeah. He is British, so, you know, again, I think that would go long. Considering, you know, currently one's a Mercedes driver and you know, Callum Ilott was in the Ferrari Drive Academy, but I don't think he is anymore because I think he's gave up on his F1. That was one of the things I, you know, found interesting looking back on this, is that I had hope for Callum Ilott, but now he's, you know, I wouldn't say stuck in IndyCar because I think he's enjoying IndyCar. I'd hope he is enjoying IndyCar, you know, if I hope that his dream isn't crushed, you know? It's like IndyCar isn't that bad, I hope. You know, I'm sure he's enjoying himself, but it's, yeah. Again, back in 2021, a lot of us thought Callum Ilott was going to get that drive, but instead, got Mazepin. We got Mazepin in F1, so, you know, that was one thing. But yeah, no, apart from that, it's playing a lot of my choices as well. Top of the board, again, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton. Put Max and Charles ahead of Lewis because, like, youth and that they're good drivers already. So, again, you're going to have more good years with them than Lewis Hamilton, for example, who might give you a few good championships, but, like, what happens afterwards, you know? If Williams and Haas want to build for the future, they're going to look at Max and Charles. Daniel Ricciardo, because that's aged very poorly. I thought going into that McLaren season that he would be the third best driver on the grid. I thought, and he might have been, but he just couldn't figure out that McLaren and whatever. I don't know what's the definite excuse for Daniel Ricciardo not performing, but he didn't perform. So that was I thought, hey, yeah, third best driver on the grid. Why not put him high up? You know, even Bottas, Perez, Vettel, solid veterans. I thought, you know, a few of the mid-range guys, except for George Russell, but you know, looking at Sainz and Gasly in the middle, decent drivers, you know. George Russell, he was good. I just thought he hadn't proven himself enough. Like, we could go, oh yeah, George Russell's gonna be up there with Charles Leclerc and Max, which probably right, but we didn't know. And I think this was prior to him getting in that Mercedes when Lewis got COVID. I think so. You know, if I'd done it even a few months later, I might have put George Russell a bit higher up, but probably not higher than, say, Lewis or Daniel Ricciardo still. Like, we didn't know until 2021 that maybe Daniel dropped off a little in terms of performance. Again, not saying he's a bad driver, just saying he didn't perform. Even like Lando Norris, very low. I didn't think he'd prove himself either. I think maybe the same concern I have about him is he's not focused. He's not as focused on F1 as you'd like him to be. Of course, he's a good driver and he's got that. I think he's got the ability to win, possibly win World Drivers' Championships. Let's see. But yeah, I did think maybe he's young. You don't know. Is he a flop? Is he a good driver? So I was like, hey, well, you know, potential-wise, I think it was best around those mid-picks. The first pick of the second round, I guess you'd say. Yeah, no. Mick I put high up because I thought Mick. You can't put Mick like crazy high up, you know. He hadn't shown like Michael Schumacher performances just yet, even though, you know, winning both F3 and F2 is pretty good, even if it took him a year. But I thought it was enough to go, okay, yeah, someone could pick him up and, you know, have a fairly future-proof driver. In this case, it was McLaren, who I think that suits Perez. You know, you get a few good years of Perez. Give time for Mick Schumacher to improve. Even Alex Albon at Aston Martin is another one I thought that could be a bit, you know, controversial coming off that 2020 year. You know, this is before Alex Albon really showed what he can do again in 2022. I still thought Alex had it, and I wasn't wrong. I think he's a good driver. Maybe he's not championship level driver, but he can win races. We'll see. We'll see how he goes. But having a little bit of a Tomo F1 moment. The Alex hype. I love Alex, man. He's good. He's good guy, and you know, I hope he does well. But anyways, yeah, even Nico Hulkenberg was another one at Alpine. I thought, out of the guys below him at the time, I thought he was probably the best choice. Maybe not future-proof, but he's a good driver until he can figure out what to do. You know, whether that is get a young driver in a few years' time. I just thought, from what you've got at the low end of the draft, you know, whatever. Hey, would have I picked him again? Maybe not. Going down, look, Esteban Ocon, put him so low because I really don't rate Ocon. Still really don't rate Ocon. He's alright. Maybe I would put him a bit closer to Pierre Gasly, possibly now. Yeah, I reckon, because I think they're both at the same level of like second driver status. They've both won a race, but how much better are they gonna do? You know, I just don't think Ocon's gonna do much, even in a good car. I think below that, I think is where I'd change a few things. I put Alonso low down, which in hindsight I wouldn't have done. But at the time, it made sense to me. I didn't think Alonso hadn't proven himself yet. He hadn't come back in, but he was on the market. He was going in there. So I decided to include Alonso in there. And I thought, you know, he's still a decent driver, right? He won't be amazing. And here we go, you know, obviously having Alonso shown over those 2021, 2022 that he's still got it. Surprisingly, I've been impressed with Alonso. So if I knew that, I would probably, again, put him higher up. But he might face probably the same issue as Nico Hulkenberg or like Lewis Hamilton, where maybe he wouldn't have too many good years left. I mean, Lewis does. You know, I reckon Lewis can drive for quite a while, but he's on the decline, let's be honest. That's the same thing I thought with Alonso, where he would be on the decline, you know, but hey, Alonso hasn't shown he's dropped off too much. some people are saying he's not prime Alonso. Fair enough. Fair enough. Callum, I thought hindsight, I would have changed that. I just thought, hey, he should get. Callum Ilott should have got a chance in F1. Like, it's a shame Mazepin got an F1 seat, but I get it. I over him because I get it because, you know, Haas needed the funds, and I think we have to deal with pay drivers. I wish it was just a pay driver that was anybody but him, you know, not too popular even still. But yeah, no, I think Callum Ilott should have got a chance, and he just lost his. I'd say his one chance, you know. Which is quite sad. Haas. Yuki Tsunoda was, again, fairly low down because he hadn't really proven himself that much, and I still think he's probably underperformed a little, you know, so I'd probably keep him there, but maybe even he falls out, to be honest, falls out of the top 20. What I was thinking, because Antonio Giovinazzi was another one where, is he a great pairing with Max Verstappen? Is Giovinazzi a great pairing with Max Verstappen? I don't think so. I think Max needs a good second driver. Let's say Williams builds a car that's win now. I don't think Giovinazzi can support Max. I think that the gap between them would be too huge, and you would be getting, you know, like sort of like a Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo situation from the last 2 years or something. I want to say even Lewis Hamilton, Bottas, but even Bottas could keep up with, you know, Lewis sometimes, just because, you know, he was a bit further down. Even Perez was a bit further, has been in inside race a bit further. But I just don't think that would be a great pairing. I don't think if I had looked at that, I would have gone, no. The only thing I would have said is maybe keep Kimi in there. Originally, I thought, Kimi didn't quite make the cut because I thought, oh, he's, you know, he might only have a year left. I think if he was in a winning car, he might extend. But even, honestly, even a year or two of Kimi alongside Max, I think he really fits that role. If Max is competing for a world championship, then yeah. Maybe even, honestly, even with Alfa Romeo, if Lewis is competing for championship again in this hypothetical situation that, you know, just because they've got a world drive championship, a world champion, or in Max's case, a future world champion on their team that they would want, you know, the correct team, and you know, they somehow had the correct engine, you know, the car to compete, is what I'm trying to say. Well, all over the place. And even Haas, maybe. Yuki's not bad alongside Charles, with like Charles wasn't yet at championship contention level, so maybe Yuki is good enough. Future though, do you want Yuki? But yeah, no, so I was saying, yeah, I probably would have, yeah, again changed Haas. I probably would have said maybe even Haas. I would have said Giovinazzi in the Haas. And then 20 would have been Kimi Räikkönen alongside Max Verstappen. I think that would be the one change. Well, not the one change, but that would be the biggest change I'd make. Not even in hindsight. It just, I screwed up there. I forgot to look at the kind of the pairings. Again, same thing with Alpine, but I don't know. At the same time with Nico Hülkenberg, you have to go, you're looking down the list and you go, oh, maybe Ocon, maybe I like, you wouldn't want to pair like Vettel and Alonso, because that's not That's not a very future-proof team. Again, Alonso would probably hate me for talking about so much about future-proof because, again, it's ageist. It's ageist that, you know, a young driver has to come in and one day replace the whole driver. Anyways, I'm sorry. I really don't believe ageist is a real thing. I'm sorry. Controversial take there, maybe, but anyway, so who actually watches this podcast or listens? I don't know. I might get away with it. Good thing about having a podcast that no one listens to or no one watches. One day that may not be correct. Hopefully one day there'll be listeners or watchers or whatever. But for now, I'm just having a good time. I guess talking to myself about F1. You know, I'm hoping people see my hot takes, but hey. But yeah, that was the 2021 fantasy draft. Anything else I gotta say? No, yeah. It was interesting. And I've never, you know, posted this anywhere or done anything with it. I kind of just did it. It was like, yeah, that's good. And then closed it. And obviously it's just been in my computer ever since. But yeah. The other thing I wanted to look at was, hold up, let me just quickly, there we go. 2023 fantasy draft. I'll explain a few of the rules again. Reverse championship order for the first 10 picks. Obviously Williams is the lowest. Sadly, considering how well Alex Albon has done, but obviously it's just a shit car, which is sad, which is really sad, because I think I've talked about this a few times, that I wish Williams had turned into a midfield team like I thought they were going to, but you know, they didn't withstand the regulations. Maybe it might have not have helped them, I don't know, but anyways, they didn't do well in the switchover from 2021 to 2022. Went backwards. Same thing I think as Aston Martin, they went backwards. But anyways, but yeah, reverse championship order at the time. A few teams like I think AlphaTauri and Haas are close together. That might change, but for now that's at the time of recording, which is 22nd of September. Basically late September, you know, maybe in a few months' time this will be a little inaccurate. Mostly a little inaccurate because I don't think anything really else is going to change. Maybe McLaren and Alpine switcheroo, but I doubt it. But yeah, most things I think are going to stay around the same for now. But and then it obviously changes to championship order, snake ladder. Few things I've got to explain is okay. Yeah. How this is going to work, because you know, obviously, in this case, the best driver would go to the worst team. It's going to be a bit different, where like in this hypothetical situation, all the teams have a similar car. At first, and then development also depends on the drivers have got, both their skill in developing the car, helping develop the car, because you know a lot of drivers do have that technical skill to really help improve the car just as much as the engineers can, that actually work on it, you know, the feedback they give, and the simulator work they do, but also just for things of attracting new staff, because imagine in this case staff is completely reset, so you know, if you've got the best drivers, you're going to attract the best staff potentially. Marketability also, obviously good drivers mean good funding, obviously, getting more money from stakeholders, possibly better sponsors. But not just how good they are, but how well they present themselves. That bit of PR coming in as well, which will come in, I think, one driver especially. I think the PR thing will come in. If you can guess who it is, well, it's not a huge, I don't think, considering I've talked about it just before. I don't think it's too hard to guess, but hey. Comment down below who you think it is. I don't know. That is for my YouTube, which is currently the only thing at the time of recording that this is going to be on. Future Spotify and Apple Music and other platforms, possibly. We'll see. Yeah, but that's that. The drivers. How do we pick the drivers? Well, I've got a list of anybody who already has a super license or is eligible. I'll show you the drivers, but I'll just explain. It's probably, you know, yeah. Sorry. Tripping over my words. Get it. Haha. No. So basically it's the 20 drivers. It's the 20 current drivers, right? Which is 20 current drivers this year. Along with, you know, Piastri. And then we've got some of the reserve drivers. I think notably the ones I do know have currently have a super license or could reapply for a super license and get it. Nico Hulkenberg, Giovinazzi, Nick De Vries, Robert Kubica, Pietro Fittipaldi. That was one of the ones I wasn't sure about, but I'm sure, you know, obviously him having a super license at least 2020, I thought it wouldn't be too much of a stretch that he could regain super license, because, you know, for anybody that doesn't know, because the super license rules are a bit confusing, is if you've had a super license at one point and it's been over 2 years, which I think would be the case, or Fittipaldi, you'd have to apply to the FIA if you can regain your super license. I think in this case Fittipaldi would be one of the people. There was a few, I think, few drivers in the reserves that at one point might have had a super license, but I think it's been a few years since they've, you know, really had it was a few years since they achieved it, so I was like not sure. But anyways, yeah, few F2 guys as well. Most notably Felipe Drogovic, Theo Porsche, Sargent, Deruvla, Duhan, Lawson, Hauger. Unless I did the math incorrectly, that should be the current F2 drivers that have or will be eligible for a super license, assuming they stay in the same positions, and assuming I've done the math correct. And then a few F3 guys, Isaac Hadjar, I believe that's how you say it, Victor Martins, Arthur Leclerc. I thought, I could be wrong. I think that's the 3 that currently are eligible. A lot of these may not matter, because, like, will they really get one of the 20? But they are there. And we've also got 2 IndyCar drivers in Alex Palou and Callum Ilott, who should, yeah, who definitely have the points for a super license. Callum Ilott is down as having a super license, in fact. Most of this I received from someone on Reddit. Well, I didn't receive. I saw his post about a mid-season report, and I did a bit of the math to, you know, correct it to this current point in time. And if I remember who that is, I will let you guys know who gave me the great report on how the super license points are right now and who's got one, who's eligible. But anyways, that's that. For now, because I think I'm running. Yeah, I'm definitely running out of time to do the draft now. You'll see a quick. For you, it might be a few seconds, but for me, it might be later in the night or tomorrow that I do the actual draft. We'll do a bit of editor magic and you know, quick cut. But for now, and when I obviously return, I will, you know, start the draft, and that will be the second half of the video. I hope I haven't rambled on too much about everything. Maybe I'll just mention where the draft actually starts if you want to skip over the whole but apart from that, few quick things before I do start after the cut. Will be I'll probably give myself like 3 minutes on the clock for everyone. Some will be obvious, so they probably won't need the 3 minutes, but others I might need a bit of thinking time, and the teams in this hypothetical situation probably would need a bit of thinking time. You know, there would be a few that they might be able to lock in easily, but a few that they'll go, let's look at our options. And with those, I'll probably even explain a few of my picks, or I'll explain my picks one by one. Hopefully, not use too much. Maybe more explanation for later picks than some of the less obvious picks. But you know, I think I'm already thinking number 1 and number 2 are going to be fairly straightforward. I won't need to explain them. I've got some ideas, but obviously I haven't planned out the whole thing. But yeah, there's definitely some easy picks up at the top that I'm already know. A few of the middle ones should be interesting after those top few picks, and then going into the second round. I'm really gonna try and concentrate on driver matchups as well to look at what would be good pairings and what would suit the hypothetical team's vision, considering who they've got. But anyways, I will return soon. Alright, I'm back. It's the day after for me. It probably was only a few seconds cut for you guys, but yeah, it's the next day. I'm ready to get into this. Ran out a bit of time yesterday, so we're doing it today. The day after, you know, if anybody's curious, 23rd of September. Before I start, I should say that a few things. A bit mind's gone. I was laughing for an hour and 30 minutes or about, just pretty much on and off, because I found this really good YouTube channel that did some great videos recently, and oh man, one was an hour video, one was a 40 minute that I haven't got through, but I've watched a decent part of both videos, and Jesus, not a waste of time, even though it seems like it would be. But anyway, so my mind's a bit muddled up, but I should be fine. So anything else? Really? Yeah, no. So yeah, probably not the best day to do this, but I've been busting my ass off to do this. Probably overhyped it a little for myself, and it's gonna really I'm gonna do it, and it's gonna, that wasn't exciting, but I have got to I have got another idea that I will hopefully use soon for a future podcast episode. If it's not next episode, it would be the episode after. That I'm also looking forward to. I want to do a few random things, you know, some out of the box things with a few hot takes, but just I want to be a bit creative. Not just be like, this is a podcast where I talk, but this is a podcast where I do other F1 things as well, like this fantasy draft. Yeah, quickly mention that, well, also there might be a bit of background noises. My dad's doing a bit of work in the front yard, I think, and all that. Maybe a bit of gardening, I think. So there might be a bit for that, a bit of noise from that. Apologize for that. I also want to say I did remember who provided most of the saves, the super license calculations for me. Well, I had to do a bit of it because the last time it had been updated was a mid-season, but it really helped a lot. Rocco TDF, I believe is his name, on Reddit. I will link him and his post in my in the description probably, just to let you guys know, hey, this is a guy who's done a lot of good work on the super licenses, and wow, like I nearly feel like reaching out to him, but I'm a nobody, so it's like, yeah, no. But at least the very least I could do is, you know, credit him, because he honestly does deserve credit. Let's just get rid of that. I don't know what that was about. Something about my memories of 22nd of September. Maybe I took a lot of screenshots or something. I think that's what it looked like. Hopefully it's nothing weird. Sorry, I heard my brother, I think he's speaking to his Google Home or something. Like the Google Home's like, blah, 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 blah. I was like, but yeah, so that's that. And in saying that, I think we can say welcome to the 2023 F1 Fantasy Draft. Yeah, let's get into it. First pick. The 3 minutes starts on the clock. This was going to be approximation because I don't actually have a timer, but I think Williams can very easily decide Max Verstappen. Not much explanation needed there. Great driver. Best driver on the grid. You might be able to argue that Charles or Lewis can challenge him. I think most people would agree that even without the best car, Max is probably the best driver currently, with a lot of years ahead of him. But it is a bit worrying, even as a Max Verstappen fan, that he says he's going to retire in 2028 after his contract with Red Bull expires, because I want to see him in F1 until he's like at least 35, maybe 40, you know, or at least once he starts dropping off, maybe he can save himself the embarrassment of being, you know, having that veteran drop off. But anyways, whatever. Too much of an explanation for what is an obvious choice. Aston Martin, second pick. I don't think. Oh, sorry. You could probably hear my dogs a lot. Why is it every time I'm trying to record? Every time. There must be a dog walking past the house, something. I'd say, oh. Okay, anyways. Aston Martin, second pick. The 3 minutes starts the clock, but they're not going to use much of their time either. I doubt. I really doubt they're going to use much of their time. Because, and they're probably thinking between two drivers that could be on the same level. One's proving themselves currently. One's definitely showing potential and showing that he could be at the same level next year or the year after. But I think they got to go with Charles Leclerc. Easy enough. Easy enough, I think. I keep on forgetting which one is. Oh, there's someone in the house. That's why. That's why. There's someone just random. I just heard a random voice. I'm like, I heard my dad talking to them, so I think it's all good. Hopefully. Maybe I'll have to go and check. But yeah, for second pick, Charles Leclerc. Pretty straightforward again. I think he hasn't got it quite yet. I don't think he's got that championship edge yet. But next year or the year after, I reckon he could win one in the right car. I don't think Ferrari is going to be the right car, but maybe Ferrari will deliver a car that consistently delivers. But well, you just got to ask Sebastian Vettel about that, and maybe at least Fernando Alonso, and I'll tell you. Sebastian Vettel is probably a poster child for just telling every Ferrari driver and driver academy, it's like, dude, you don't want to be Ferrari. But yeah, no. And again, change of scenario for change of location, of scenery, I meant, for Charles. I think he could win multiple championships as well, given the right car. AlphaTauri, number 3. They were probably looking at number 2's pick to see where they're going. I think in a fantasy draft that usually benefits the younger people, and not only younger, but the younger that have actually proven themselves, I think they decide George Russell. He's certainly proven, I think he could win races. If he, in the right scenario, he can win races. Hasn't yet. But give that bit time, that Mercedes a bit of time to get back where it used to be, yeah, then definitely. I think it's hard to say if he's better than Lewis currently, but you got to say he's got a lot more better years left than Lewis. And yeah, George Russell is definitely a future world champion. And if you want to say out of the 3 that are guaranteed, well, Max has already won one, but even if you don't count the first, the second one is, obviously pretty much guaranteed for him, other than Singapore or Japan, probably Japan. Then you've got Charles and George, who could win multiple championships as well. All depends on which cars have the fastest car, I reckon. But yeah, I think that's the easier ones. Number 4, Haas is on the clock, sorry. Got a draft drink. Number 4, Haas. Who do they want to choose? Who is left on the board? A lot of risky choices. But I do think... Haas want to go with... Ooh. In this... Honestly, Haas think it over. And I think they have to go Lewis Hamilton. Oh, quick thing I forgot to mention. In this scenario, AlphaTauri is not a junior team. We are assuming that Andretti has bought AlphaTauri. So AlphaTauri is now Andretti Motorsports, or Andretti AlphaTauri, or whatever. Probably Andretti Motorsports, but maybe they would like the AlphaTauri be like, we're sort of a junior team to Red Bull, but we're our own team. Have one seat that's a Red Bull, one seat that's their own driver, and for a while, I think. But yeah, one thing I haven't mentioned is who fits, like, I think the who fits the the teams, but I think for these first few peaks, it's going to be get the best of the best. Get the best of the best, because you can't miss out on, I think, already the 4 that have been quite good. Look, in this situation, I think I would certainly consider like Lewis going, oh, Lewis says he wants to drive multiple races. Oh, now there's another dog going off. Jeez, it's every time I try to record. Sorry, my nose, nose is a bit blocked as well. Everything's just going wrong with this recording. Oh, jeez, I'm quite, nasally, I think, if that's the word. Anyways, yeah, no, Lewis Hamilton, I think they decide that Lewis has maybe only got a few more years in him. I honestly think he's only got 2023. I think after his current contract, he will call it quits. I'm going to talk more about that prediction maybe in a later video. But yeah, a lot of people saying no. Lewis is saying he'll race for a while. I think, personally, similar to Vettel, I think he has other things to do. I think in the current situation, not the hypothetical situation, being paired with George Russell and, George Russell kind of chasing him down, literally and metaphorically, I think will be a bit of pressure, and he will decide that that's maybe, it's only a matter of time before George Russell, does pass him, and maybe the team's almost going in George Russell's, direction. Maybe being in a new team without the pressure of George Russell would help Lewis stay a few more years, but how much has he got left? If he, let's say, he signs 2 years in this hypothetical, would after that 2 years he'll be, maybe. But I think if Haas give him the right car, it would be good, obviously, to have a future world champion driving your car. So I'm going to say Lewis. I was considering putting him a bit lower for the reason that how much has he got? But he's still, I'm going to say top 5. Top 5 drivers. A lot of people say top 3. A lot of people say top 1. But let's be top 5 to be somewhat generous, but a little bit pessimist. Number 5, Alfa Romeo on the clock. Alfa Romeo are looking at who could they possibly get here? I think in this case, I think they need to get another one that I think would be lower. But given he has shown potential and a little bit of performance, I think you gotta say Lando Norris. Lando Norris at number 5. Alfa Romeo. I think, look, like I said, he's had great performances, obviously. He nearly won at Russia 2021 before the rain fell. Before that fateful incident where people ahead of him just made the better call, or behind him made the better call, and what did he drop down to 7th after that? It went backwards for him. And obviously the second, possibly another possible first, when at Monza last year as well. And just the fact that he's the only driver out of the top 3 teams, outside of the top 3 teams, that have got a podium this year. He is certainly driving well. I do So I think that's probably where the whole, like, he's a good driver. And is he a World Drivers' Championship? We could see. Will he maybe turn into Bun, where he could get one by a bit of luck, maybe, you know, get in the right car, have the right car for 1 year, then drop off and kind of be chasing. But, like, you know, does he get like one lucky season? Maybe he might be that sort of guy, or he might even be a Massa who's just up there in the fight, but can never quite do it, even with a close battle. But anyways, I think the one problem with that might mean he would have been pushed back a bit further back is his obviously commitment, the fact that there's a lot of things he does outside of the sport, which is okay. You're allowed to have hobbies, you know. It's just maybe those hobbies are too. He's more into those hobbies than he is F1 driving. You know, probably sounding like a bit of a boomer. Probably like Sky Sports right now. Oh, he's not into it. He's all about YouTube and hanging out with his friends and doing online racing. No, but I honestly, you can't miss out on him. You really can't say that he hasn't got talent. But I think he might be similar to Shaq. Shaq in NBA. Similar because I'm watching the Lakers show currently, the Legacies, the true story of the LA Lakers. And they're talking about, you know, and they're showing Shaq. He didn't have the drive. He had natural talent. He was a monster. But the thing was, when you compare it to Kobe Bryant, who was just, he was in mentally, he had the talent. He had the drive. He had the desire, the power to become a all-time great. You're looking at, if Shaq had that, imagine how good he could be. Just not with his just physical talent, but now he's got mental talent. Like, I think that's maybe Lando Norris, where if he's doing good now, imagine if he, you know, put the blood, sweat, and tears that Lewis and Max did. So I think he has talent, but obviously you gotta ask questions about his commitment, I feel. Anyways, 6 McLaren on the clock. This is a tricky one. Luckily, that my mic's not picking up my drinking currently, so that's good. But anyways, oh, this is an interesting one. This is an interesting one because McLaren, I think I forgot to mention that I'm assuming that people who are in the driver academy would be someone that they have probably test. Like, let's say they're redoing their lineups, they would probably still put priority on testing their own drivers, I think. In saying that, there is one obvious one, but is he just a little unproven? What would you be thinking if you were? Oh, I've got one idea that I think people are just gonna. Oh, I don't know. I think people are going to shit on me, for lack of a better word. Still running out of time. I think this is someone that probably would be on their draft board, considering where they are. Looking at where everybody is. You know what? In this case scenario, let's go. Let's actually do it. Fernando Alonso. Is this a mistake? This may be the bust of the draft. I think in this scenario, Fernando Alonso is one of the current World Drivers' Champions. on the double world drivers champion on the grid, you know, obviously along with Lewis, Max, Sebastian Vettel. Unlike Sebastian Vettel, he might have a bit more in him. I think Alonso is just unhuman in how he's been performing, I would say. But unlike Max or Lewis, maybe he's a further shot of getting one, especially Max. I think if Alonso was given the right car, I think he could do something with it. Hopefully. Now again, this could be a bust, and this might be the one where it's disagreeable. I still think he has one world championship in him. If not, he has race wins. But I think if we're looking at who's already taken and who's looking at who's already back on the board, I think you gotta say Fernando Alonso's up there. I think he's in the middle where he's sort of, you're looking at some drivers that haven't been taken that maybe more mid drivers, and then Alonso's not quite at the level of some of the up and coming young drivers, as well as Lewis Hamilton, who's still great. So it could go either way. I think it's a risk that's worth taking. Only thing I would say is Alonso, third time coming back to McLaren after last time with McLaren, again, was more about the Honda thing, the Honda engine. He was saying McLaren were doing a great job. It's just the Honda engine that was holding us back. GP2 engine. Love it. And even the first time where kind of his, McLaren stint was ruined by the young Lewis Hamilton coming in. But we're saying in this hypothetical world that they at least give their teams 1 year a chance. They give them at least one chance to go. Any future history, bang. I don't know. Do we like mind wipe the previous drivers? I don't know. Mind wipe all the drivers to just say they don't have any recollection. Maybe Alonso will think he's 18 again. Another start for Alonso, like the theories have been saying after he had that 2015 accident. Anyways, a risk. Not the best pick, maybe, but high reward, high risk pick, I'd say. Anyways, let's move on to number 7, Alpine. 3 minutes on the clock. Alpine, and I'm probably not doing the 3 minutes, but I'm trying not to take too long. What have we got? Because really, with everyone's looking at their first pick and they're looking, let's get the best of the best. But is the best of the best already taken? I'm looking, and honestly, it's all 20. Yeah, all 20. Okay. I just looked at it, didn't look as big. Okay, no, so let's take that, minus that out. They're still seeing a lot of talented drivers here. A lot of talented drivers. Or maybe more, you would consider more mid-tier drivers. But if I had to say one person that stands out, I think Alpine would choose in this case. It would be a bit of homecoming from Carlos Sainz. And let's add the junior in, because that's how I've got him down as in the list. Carlos Sainz Jr. Honestly, 2021 impressed me. I thought he was going to be better than Charles in 2022, but but he's still a good driver. I think he's still a good driver. He's still got a few good years. You know, he's approaching those middle of the years ages where you start to look at like he's in his prime. Maybe a few years into his 30s, he might be in his primes. Then he's like, you know, it's hard to judge whether prime age is, because I know in basketball, for example, and I think it's fairly similar. It's fairly similar, but you do get a lot of younger drivers performing at I think an early age in F1. But at least in NBA, it's more like the 27, 28, 29. Maybe a few years in their 30s, for example. I think Steph Curry's still arguably in his primes, even though he's like 34 or something now. 33 maybe. And then you've got beasts like LeBron James who are still playing like he's sort of in his prime, sort of declining, but still. Anyways, basketball comparison side, I think this is probably the best time of Carlos Sainz's career. I'll be interested to see what he can do if he was given the number one driver. Because I think Red Bull knew he had talent. And anybody who is in the Red Bull driver academy, I trust, because I trust they know how to spot talent. They know how to spot talent. But I think for someone like Alpine, maybe it's the best they can do. We're still having fairly good driver, I would say. Maybe not the best number 2 driver on the grid, but certainly I think the one that's more likely to be a number 1 currently, that's shown himself and has shown he might still have a few good years. I think Alpine take the risk on him as well. Maybe you would say Alpine did a better pick than McLaren, say, with Fernando, let's say. Maybe you swap them around. Maybe you put Alonso way back, but I don't know. Number 8, Mercedes. We're looking into the supposed top teams now. That again might go a little backwards. They might go a little backwards. In this case, because they don't get to pick the better drivers. Mercedes. Who would they want? In my eyes, who could they pick up that would be decent? I'm looking at one, potentially one that could be like, hey, maybe he's a second driver, but maybe he's decent as well, you know. Gotta look at him. Gotta look down that path. But with time running out on the clock, might have to make a quick decision. You know what? I think he would be good as a second driver. But I do think you have to take the leap on Sergio Perez, the other second driver. You know what? I'll copy the special E, the E with the indent. I don't know. There's a word for it. But anyways, I think Mercedes go over Sergio Perez. Yeah, solid second driver. He's winning races. He does a pretty good job in the race, I'd say. You look at 2021 holding Lewis Hamilton off. You look at obviously some of his race wins, which were a bit lucky considering, you know, Max Verstappen wasn't in a position to win. Maybe he can't win in that case, but if he's given the first driver role, I think Perez takes advantage of that in a decent car, maybe. Depends. Again, I'm not exactly sure who's really the best technical drivers. But there is one technical driver that maybe maybe could get a bit higher up. I'm just thinking. But anyways, Perez, I don't think he's a bad driver. I think he's still got it. Maybe he's a little bit too high up because he is someone who's may even retire after 2024. That's a possibility. He's approaching his later years. He's still performing. It's he though, like the the person going forward. Maybe that's something Mercedes will have to think in that second pick, getting a bit of a younger driver in. I think Ferrari number 9. Look, I'd say everybody on the board that is currently doing well is off the board. All the race winners, for example, all the young drivers that's proven themselves. With that being said, maybe then we gotta look at marketability, looking at the fit for their team. Maybe in this scenario, Ferrari is a little bit lower down and need to take a risk on a young driver. A young driver what they could go with that now. I think in this scenario, I'm going to pull the trigger. Oscar Piastri. A bit too high up? You might say so. Maybe. There's certainly a lot of proven F1 drivers, and he hasn't even really got much of a drive. He hasn't got an FP1 either. No FP1 outing. But honestly, I think you gotta look at what he can offer, and I think in this case it's another risky move where you go Ferrari, maybe take a risk in saying, hey, in this scenario they're a bit lower down, they can't really get someone who will improve their car too much. There may be one person that can improve their car a little bit. Saying again in this alternate scenario where the teams lower down would maybe not as develop as fast. I think maybe Oscar Piastri might be a young gun that Ferrari need. Again, I'm there's a bit of a stretch here. You would think I'd just go for pure who's the best. But yeah, honestly, Oscar Piastri. Okay. Now, Red Bull. Red Bull is on the clock. 10th pick, final pick of the draft. Remembering they have another pick directly after it. So they have two turns to get this right, but that also means their draft is over pretty quickly. Because they don't get any picks off that. So it could be easy to say, oh, 2 picks, but 2 picks in a row is scary as well. Look, Red Bull, I think, could be looking at someone. I think there's a few different scenarios that Red Bull could go for. But I also think Red Bull might think they need someone who can develop the car, maybe someone who's a bit experienced. Maybe you do another risky move like the people ahead of them and go for someone who could possibly be their future. Potentially in this scenario, they're not competing anymore. It'll be a weird F1 season where Williams, Aston Martin, and AlphaTauri at the top of Haas. Haas and Alfa Romeo are actually near where they are, but Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes at the back. If we were to go to pure talent-wise, even pure talent would be, I think, a bit harder to do. I think it would be a bit harder. But, you know what? I think Red Bull, with not much longer on the clock, Sebastian Vettel. I think Sebastian Vettel is someone who can improve the car. He's good. I think he's fairly good technical. I know, for example, Daniel Ricciardo is not good technical, but I think Vettel would be able to, with his experience, would be able to give the constructive feedback that maybe could give them the edge over some of the people a little higher than them. Maybe fast track the development, get them on the right track to get back to the top. And I certainly think he still has it in him. I really do think that Sebastian Vettel could win races if given the chance, but in this scenario, I don't think he would. But maybe we consider that Red Bull's has some pre-existing resources that they keep. I'm trying not to make the Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes too overpowered as they are. But they still do have the brand. They still do have the Red Bull brand. You can't forget that. And they could hire some good people to maybe improve the car. But I think having a solid bunch of group of people, not just the engineers, the team boss, the people in the team, but also a driver like Sebastian Vettel that can really help boost that. I think that's how you go. And a lot of people might go, "Ooh, that's a hard pick. Or not a hard pick. That's a questionable pick, possibly." Okay. I'm just noticing it took like 40 minutes for me to get halfway through. I'm hoping that we can get the rest done pretty quickly. So 11 Red Bull on the clock. Again, now we're looking into the second driving pairings. Do Red Bull then take the leap of faith with a young driver? Got an old driver, you might need a young driver as well. Or do they assume even that they're going to be competitive straight away in some sort of miraculous way that can only be described as being a Red Bull or Mercedes? I think Red Bull maybe go that direction. Possibly. I think actually, no, this is actually maybe a good idea. I think I didn't think of this, but given that they do have an existing relationship already, Mick Schumacher. If you want markability, you gotta have the Schumacher name. I think having Vettel and Schumacher in Red Bull, maybe even getting Porsche, maybe saying, "Hey Porsche, look at our driver lineup. Maybe we'll accept the 50% ownership, maybe, as long as it can be retracted and we can regain ownership." I think maybe this is the case where Vettel and Schumacher, it would be a great lineup. I'd love it. They would be really, I think, especially in terms of what point they are each in their career, It would be just a very nice driver line to see. So maybe I'm a bit biased, but I do think Schumacher would be the young driver that they possibly desire. I think obviously some people would probably stay at Red Bull, the existing Red Bull people. I think you can't say it would change like completely, but obviously it would lose a few in this hypothetical situation where they do have to rehire or hire new people. But I think Red Bull would be a good place for Mick, especially under his mentor. In maybe a situation where Vettel's going like, hey, I want to maybe I'm out of it, but maybe I can help the team and I can help my idol's son to succeed. I think it could be really wholesome, and it would definitely set them up for the next few years. Even after Vettel goes, now you got a Mick who's been mentored by a great in a car that should be improved a lot by Vettel's guidance and veteran status. I think that could be good. Possibly. I don't know. Is there much more to it? Again, we're going into some of the ones that maybe a few of the better drivers won't get in straight away. Maybe they'll drop a bit further back, but there's obviously, now we're getting to the point where there's not a huge amount of people that are great. You could be saying, oh, there's a few people I've missed out on. Yeah, sure, of course. But I think number 12, Ferrari. They've got time on the clock. Oscar Piastri. They need to pair someone with Oscar Piastri. And in that scenario, I think Oscar Piastri should be paired maybe with someone a bit inexperienced, maybe, possibly. I think possibly in this scenario, Oscar Piastri is paired with maybe Pierre Gasly. I've gone on record and saying I think Pierre Gasly is fairly mid. I think he can win races, but he can't win championships. He's a good second driver, but for a team like Ferrari, who again maybe have to rebuild a little, and they've got a young driver that I think is solid. Maybe they need someone for a few years who will give them consistent points, assuming that Oscar Piastri can't do that. Maybe, it's a big leap to get to F1. We don't know how well Oscar Piastri will do in his first year. Maybe give someone like Gasly a go that can develop the car a little bit from giving them the data of, getting some good points, some podiums, possibly a win if they're lucky. But we're assuming that in this case, Ferrari probably wouldn't be competing for wins straight away. But I think Gasly could do all right in filling that role. And I think, I don't know. I'm already I'm looking at a lot of people that have already been in the either the Red Bull Driver Academy. Already have got a drive. I think a few that maybe haven't. I look a bit biased as a Red Bull fan, but hey, I don't think Pierre's great. I just think he could do well maybe in that situation. 13 Mercedes on the clock. Sergio Perez. They've currently got Sergio Perez. So what sort of driver would you pair with Sergio Perez? Sergio Perez, let's say Mercedes have a bit of an upper hand over like Red Bull and Ferrari in this case, where they're maybe just a bit closer to competing with the best, but still not quite there. But Sergio Perez, I think maybe in this case scenario, you do look at how Sergio Perez's limited lifespan in the sport. I don't want to say lifespan, and he's gonna drop dead anytime soon. Oh God, please don't make that. Right, no. Please don't make that something that happens. Oh boy, no. Oh, there is one person that fits I think a role. That would be another Red Bull driver or former Red Bull driver academy. That's young, but also also experienced, because maybe they don't want to quite go for a straight away young driver. Hmm. 26. Not amazingly young, but possibly someone that could compete in a few years' time. Or they could go straight for the young driver, I think, as well. Or they could even take a risk with an unproven but still young. Or they could go to F2, for example, to extract someone maybe. But we're also thinking, what is Mercedes' target audience as well, maybe? Who would look good in Mercedes? A German driver, for example? I think Red Bull already stole the 2 German drivers. There's probably one more here. Maybe not. Surely one of them is German. If something's not standing out, then yeah. Nico Rosberg, anyone? Mercedes, I think, oh no, okay. Honestly, let's just say in this case, Mercedes aren't looking at that currently, and they're just looking at a pairing. Driver pairing for Perez, I think, to pair with Perez, and let me just see, have I missed anybody? Let's do it. Alex Albon. I don't, maybe it's not quite yet the time to jump on one of the super young drivers, the drivers that haven't had experience, but Alex Albon could do alright, again, maybe they're in that position where, again, it looks so bad, Albon, Vettel, Gasly, Carlos Sainz, Verstappen. I suppose there is a lot of former Red Bull drivers, possibly just because they're really good. Again, proving my point that the Red Bull Drive Academy, but most people know that the Red Bull Drive Academy is pretty good. But anyways, I've been saying anyways a lot. I need a new word. Albon, I think he's solid. He's solid. I think this is certainly a little more likely that Albon in the next few years could get Mercedes. But Albon does certainly looks like he might be a full-time Williams driver. Hopefully, maybe in real life, Williams are going to improve a bit in the next few years. That would be cool. Seeing Albon at the top with Williams, that would be... Geez, you would be like, whoa, what happened? But yeah, no, maybe 2025, 2026 or something, So you could probably see Williams rise to glory again. But anyways. Take a shot for every time I say it anyways. To the 1 or 2 people who might be watching this. Yeah, there's not too much more to say. Proven, yet someone young. Certainly fits a timetable for when Perez leaves. You've got another person that's solid, and maybe by that time in this universe, hypothetical universe, Albon would be up to standard, possibly. Again, tell me if that's a good pick. I'm not sure. Alpine. We're looking into who could possibly do well. Now, Alpine are interesting where they are. They've probably just missed out on the top 5 teams. No, not quite, actually. I was just thinking 7th, okay. But still, they're getting closer to being... Honestly, they're probably midfield at this point. In this scenario, they're midfield. Got Carlos Sainz Jr., who isn't bad. But like I said, could be a bit mid. I don't like using the term mid, but it is probably an accurate term when you don't use it like to, you don't use it in an offensive way, I think. I don't know. Alpine, Carlos Sainz. Just thinking, do Alpine go, we'll go for French driver. God, and then it would be Ocon. But I don't think Ocon's in this scenario is great. I also know Ocon wouldn't be great for car development, which Alpine would probably need a bit in this scenario, because he's just really bad with the car development side of things. In saying that, I think Alpine. Do Alpine go for a good second driver? Or a young driver? Or a bit of both, perhaps? You know what? Someone who's really dropped far back, but he isn't that bad. Let's go Valtteri Bottas. Is it the best? Maybe not. Bottas has said he wants to. Sorry. Whoop. Sorry. There's a lot of mistakes I made. Hopefully I don't leak anything. It's alright, no one watches this anyways. That's mostly for my video watchers. The people watching on YouTube, audio listeners don't get the juicy stuff of me exposing some little things, I think. Not much. I'm not exposing my internet history, for example. Anyway, I stopped myself there. Bottas, Alpine, solid driver, possibly a good second driver, but also someone who's going to get you consistent points. Bottas is just a really consistent driver, I think. You know? A lot of people say he's a really consistent driver. And it's quite sad to see Bottas drop this far back when you think in the last one I put him ahead of Perez. I've honestly never rated him as high as Perez. But you got to think he was in a Mercedes just a few years ago. Why is he so far back? But anyways. Someone shoot me. Bottas. Again, another solid pick. Solid pick. I think for Alpine, getting a bit old when you think Carlos Sainz also maybe on the older side. But in saying that, I will just check how old Carlos. I think he's like 28, isn't he? Not old, but you know. I think watching NBA and F1s gave me a really bad perception of age where like people start to drop off after 30 in the NBA, for example, and I'm like, oh god, my life's going to be over by the time I'm 30, and I'm already thinking, oh god, I'm getting old. Even in NBA terms, 24, it's still a young player. So I should look at it that way. But yeah, 28. He's 28. Not, just turned 28. Not terribly old. And Valerie Bollis isn't terribly old either. Best pairing? Probably not. But again, I think, yeah, that's competitive. Alonso. Now, Fernando Alonso, I think McLaren's target is a younger driver. They're putting young drivers on the board. But they also might want to look for a good second driver, possibly. Someone I think that maybe, that would be a good fit for them would be that. Let's see. I think no. You know what? I think he's a little underage. I think Guan Yu Zhao. No, it's Guan Yu Zhao. No, it's Zhao Guan Yu. But in fact, we should probably redo that just to be a real more respectful. I think that's how they like it done in a lot of Asian, especially Chinese and Japanese cultures. Last name first, first name second. But anyways, I think he's a solid second driver. He's already proven himself, and I'm quite surprised about Zhao. That he's done well. I really thought he was going to end up as someone who was be more of a pay driver. That 3 years, 3 or 4, 3 years, I think, to actually, and then even then after those 3 years not get a great result. I thought he might be, I don't know. I didn't have faith in him, but I'm really surprised. I'm just going to check his age as well. And me as the draft person should know this. But 23. Jeez, I thought he would be a little bit older than that, but that makes sense given that he did spend quite a bit of time in F2. Yeah, no, that probably makes sense. Younger than me. It's weird. It's weird when you get to the age where a lot of drivers or NBA players are younger than you, and you're like, God, what am I doing in my life? But yeah, I think that alongside Alonso would be interesting because it's a good driver, that's a good second driver. I think I would cap Zhao at a second driver, a really good second. I think he's going to be a solid second driver, and I'll talk to a little bit more about that in a future video, my predictions video, I think. And he's young, so he's certainly someone Alonso could pass the torch to after a few years' time. I think he fits two things perfectly. Alfa Romeo, Lando Norris. For 16, Alfa Romeo, what do they want now? Alfa Romeo want a second driver, I would say. Second driver. I think they got to go for second driver. If Lando Norris is in a competitive car and he's ready to fight, I think he needs a good second driver that could be quite solid. Alfa Romeo. To say Giovinazzi, Italian. No. Who would probably be the best second driver left on the board? Probably that. Probably him. Probably. but maybe not as well. Hmm. Hmm. Possibly, but also not. I think Alfa Romeo need a good pairing. The only one I'm looking at one currently, but I'm thinking maybe chemistry. Chemistry wouldn't be the best. Because I don't see him as a very likable guy. I'm gonna be honest. Is there anybody there that really... Or he could go for... could pair the two up again. You know what? That or that. Ah, God. Yeah, Esteban Ocon. Let's go. Esteban Ocon's still still a good enough driver. I think he's fairly. I think him and Ocon would be on the same level. So I think he's a good second driver. Would he jeopardize Norris a bit? Maybe. But I think if you put Ocon in his place, and maybe even in that Alfa Romeo, they won't be, you know, competing for championship straight away. Again, in this scenario where teams like Alfa Romeo and Haas and that are a bit more competitive, but maybe still on the outskirts, still in the between of the top teams in the midfield, like the high midfield. I think giving that, maybe even that's a chance of... Have I spelled Esteban? I have not spelled Esteban correctly. That is how much little respect I have for him. And I don't piss that cock on us. I don't think he's a very likable driver. So that being said, hey, give Lando Norris a little bit of a nudge. I think that's a good... Maybe in a team like that, you do have to have two good drivers in a similar way that Ferrari has two good drivers. But you'd think Norris would have the advantage in this case over Ocon. But yeah, solid. I think a solid pairing, and by the time they get to the point of maybe competing for a championship, you know, maybe they have who's the better driver sorted. I think in this case it would be Norris, but obviously Norris would probably improve more than Ocon would. So yeah, you know, taking a bit longer with these ones. So let's try to speed up. 17 Haas. Who has got? Lewis Hamilton. Okay. Another one where you're looking probably for a young driver. You also probably want a good second driver. In this case, you could have a bit of both. You could have a bit of both that I don't think jeopardizes Lewis too much. Somewhat young. Or you could, there's still quite a few on the list that haven't got spot, which is probably right, because there's a few on this list that probably aren't going to get a seat. I'm surprised about one that may not look like they get a seat. Well, someone to pair Lewis Hamilton. I think in this scenario, you need a good driver, but also you can't, for example, put a complete rookie with Lewis Hamilton. If he's in a car that's possibly in championship contention, that's why I'm going to say Nick de Vries. I've gone on record saying that Nick de Vries, I didn't have a high expectations of him, but then he went like, whoa, he impressed. A lot of people their first outing in the car with limited time, obviously not having like the summer testing, not having that simulator time, maybe a bit of simulating time, that someone that wasn't preparing for a full-time role in that car, and has certainly had, well, he was racing in that Aston Martin, I think, in FP1, wasn't he? It's crazy that if you look at, for example, someone like Jack Aitken, who still got beaten by Latifi, I think, and you know, Latifi, not many people have high expectations of Latifi. A few of us say, "Woo, go Latifi," but we don't really mean it. I think Nick De Vries could be a solid number 2, as well as being someone that could take the reins from Lewis in a few years' time. Maybe. AlphaTauri, which is now Andretti. Ooh. Do they go for someone Andretti? Oh no, this could actually be interesting. Now this could be interesting because they might want to go for markability as well. They might go for a nice, good second driver who is also likely to pair George Russell, who is also very popular, or is somewhat popular in the American market. But I think there could also be a good, possibly second driver. Maybe give George Russell a little bit of money if he's run for his money. If he is in that car, you got to be careful. But I don't think at this stage of the career, Daniel Ricciardo, I don't think he would be too much of a risk. I think the best way to describe Daniel Ricciardo is, even though he may have butted heads with Max early on in those Red Bull years and he decided to step away, him and Max are still really good friends. Unlike, like, for example, Lewis and Hamilton and Nico Rosberg, who hate each other, who absolutely hate each other for competing and stealing points, and, you know, still Lewis, Nico sort of stole one of his championships. But I don't know. Maybe you put Daniel Ricciardo with George Russell, which is, again, possibly another likely 2024 lineup if Lewis does leave. I think I'm just accelerating the timetable. Aston Martin on the clock, 19th pick. We're getting very close to the end. Aston Martin, Charles Leclerc. Aston Martin are also looking. There's already a few people I'm not looking at. Ooh. No, I think you got to look at one of the last, I'd say, good drivers out of the current F1 drivers. In Kevin Magnussen. He's still a solid driver. I think he's still a solid driver. I think he wouldn't challenge Charles too much, so Charles would still probably have the advantage in that fight. So not to jeopardize the championship, but I think he's a solid second driver. I think he would make a pretty solid second driver to Charles Leclerc. You know, good second driver that could help Charles win a championship and could help Aston Martin win the constructors. That's the most important thing. A lot of people saying I'm underrating Kevin Magnussen, but I think that's where he's probably about at this point. You know, he's in no man's land with age. No man's land with his current performances, I'd say. And even in a good car, he was impressing a little bit. Dropped off, obviously, when the car dropped off. But I think now that he's consistently being beaten by Mick, and Mick's also someone who they're looking at, oh, is he really that good? Maybe he's not that highly sought out of. You know, he had his few good results at the start. Now it's all starting to go like, Magnussen, all right. Yeah, sure. All right, yeah. But that's probably my explanation for Aston Martin's pick. Williams, 20 on the board. Like I said, I'm already going to say, Yuki Tsunoda, I don't see him having much of a future in F1. They might take Iwasa over him, I reckon. It's hard to say if Iwasa's probably better than Tsunoda, but maybe. I think you got to take the risk with Iwasa in that case if you're AlphaTauri in a few years' time. I'm saying Lance Stroll. Meh. I would get a lot of hate for that because I do know there are quite a few passionate Lance Stroll fans. But I think he's a low tier driver that even though he's young, he's not improving I think he's reached his peak, unlike, or maybe Verstappen has reached he's pretty much in his prime, and like how much better can Verstappen get? You know, you gotta ask, oh jeez, or Charles Leclerc, or George Russell, or even Lando Norris, you know. A lot of those young drivers, if he's in the same kind of place, then yeah. Again, Latifi, I'm not really looking at Latifi. I don't think he should be in. I think Latifi is a good seat warmer, but he showed promise. He did show promise, I think in 2021. I was like, oh, could this be a comeback for Latifi? Then he's kind of dropped back, and you know, obviously he is very crash prone. I'm thinking Max probably does need a second driver. Is Pastor Maldonado available? Has he got a super license? He could be a good to get, you know, maybe interfere with the rest of the competition, run up the back of someone. And it wouldn't be even Red Bull calls it in. He just does it because he's incompetence. A lot of times in the steward's office, and they'll be like, Maldonado's just a shit driver. We didn't tell him to do that. He just helped us coincidentally. And we'll look at a few of those drivers. I paired Giovinazzi with Max last time, but I don't think I would again. And Williams? I don't think they would go too far down this list. Not too far, I don't think. I'm looking at one that could possibly... I might have to. I think they might have to go for a young driver in this case. I don't think they've got a great second driver. Maybe that's the fallback of being the first pick, that, you know, when you get the 20th pick, you also don't have a great selection. So in this case, Williams is owned by American ownership. Yeah, I think it's American ownership. And we've got American driver here. But I just wanted to quickly check, is there anybody that could possibly... I would say out of these three, out of the three F2 drivers, you guys probably know who I'm talking about already. But yeah. Let's go. Logan Sargent. The only other person I could think of as a really dark horse is Jack Doohan. I'm a bit biased though, so I will avoid that. Again, Williams, maybe they just take a shot in saying, hey, we're an American-owned team. Let's get American in. And the Williams are looking at Logan Sargent currently. That's one of the ones where it's going to be weird where, yeah, he might be in the current team. He might also be in my fantasy team up. What I mean. So, just a quick recap. I won't spend too much time because I've already spent it quite a bit. Let's go first Red Bull, for example. Let's see who's. You know what? Let's actually no. Let's go Williams first, right? Williams, because they're set to be the best team. But I must say, Max Verstappen is good. Maybe they'll suffer from having Logan Sargent as their second best, you know. He might need a little bit of time. Maybe they lose the championship, the Constructors' Championship, even though they're the best team. You know, it'll be hard to see, is it? And Sargent is spelled, I never know how Sargent is spelled. It's a weird spelling of it. Anyways, that is not how you spell Sargent. Hold on, I looked away for 1 second. Max Verstappen, Logan Sargent. Max hasn't got the best supporting cast. A young driver certainly isn't what they're looking for. But I think it's probably the best in this case. Aston Martin, again, I did talk about the pairings a little bit. Charles Leclerc and Kevin Magnussen. If you rate Kevin Magnussen high, this is solid. If you don't, maybe they miss out just again. And maybe you have AlphaTauri, who in this case would be Andretti, as the future. As the first World Championships, while the others kind of figure out. Maybe in the chaos, it all looks a bit blurry, I think. George Russell and Daniel Ricciardo. But then they've got the problem of, is Daniel Ricciardo still good enough to maybe interfere a little bit too much? So I think that with the top 3 teams, again, this is something with a lot of fantasy drafts, that the best teams aren't necessarily the ones that pick first. But especially in a case of F1 where, you know, the teammates do compete with each other. Basketball, for example, even NFL, they're all on the same side. Maybe a bit of ego comes into play, but they're all on the same side. So maybe the top 3 teams will be a bit of disarray, but let's look at who Haas has. Haas also has Lewis Hamilton, Nick de Vries. Nick de Vries looks like he's fairly humble. He's got a good attitude. I think Nick de Vries would just be happy to learn, to be patient, hopefully, and I think he would let Lewis Hamilton compete, support Lewis as much as he can. I honestly think Nick would be humble. He would fit into his role. Maybe a little better than George Russell does currently. You know? Or George Russell is looking like, I've been stuck in Williams so long, you know. I'm surprised Nick doesn't even have that, like, that grudge almost, of that I should have been in F1 so much sooner. And maybe he does have a bit of that, but he stays humble. I want to say this young kid, but he's much older than me. Alfa Romeo. I don't know how much of my keyboard you can hear. Probably a bit. Alfa Romeo has I could probably just post this a little bit later on in the comments or something. Lando Norris, Esteban Ocon. This one might go through a bit of a chemistry problem issue. I'd say in this case, Alfa Romeo would be a midfield team that's slowly inching into the top teams. Give it a year or two, maybe. But especially in their first year, it'll be a bit of a learning curve of this, I think. Maybe Norris and Ocon would get along, but as well, they're two. I would think Norris would do much better than Ocon, hopefully, and then Norris just puts Ocon in his place, and Ocon goes, "Oh, I can't keep up," But maybe he would find a way to blame the team. McLaren, and is it McLaren? I think it's with a capital L. So Alonso, Fernando, and I was forgetting Zhao Guanyu. Zhao Guanyu. Again, I think Zhao seems like a nice guy that would stay too much out of Alonso's way. And I'm surprised if Alonso's willing to even help out Ocon, I think he would help out Zhao Guanyu. So it'd be I think it would be an interesting scenario where maybe Alonso would drop off a bit, or he'd realize that he doesn't have the best chance, and help out his teammate a bit. He's certainly showed that with Ocon, and I don't think Ocon's a very likable guy. So if you did the same for Ocon, I'd imagine you'd do it for Zhao. Alpine, slowly getting through these. God damn, the time on this podcast. This is going to be a bit of a long one. I'm so sorry. I will put a marker to when the actual draft starts. So if you want to just watch the draft rather than the all the blabber I did before about the 2021 one, I will have that. But if you're already here, you probably wish I would have said that earlier on. But I'll make sure to put it in the description. Alpine Carlos Sainz Jr. Again, another midfield team that's maybe sniffing the front of the pack. Possibly. Maybe a bit further down, maybe in the bottom half, but they could also get a bit higher in the midfield than the next year as well. Sniff, I don't know. Carlos Sainz and Valtteri Bottas. There we go. Okay. Again, I think Bottas would help out Sainz, and Sainz would help out Bottas. You could kind of decide. They've got enough time to figure things out with the team dynamic. I think that would be nice enough to each other, and for that to work, so with some solid results. I think they're both capable of getting some solid results. In maybe a slightly slower car, Mercedes. We said Sergio Perez. And let's not bother with the specially at the moment. And Alex Albon. Yeah. I mean, what more is there to say? Sergio Perez, Alex Albon. I think you've got a current veteran who will perform, as well as I don't want to say a young guy, but a guy that's maybe still finding a step or two. I think with Albon, they're set for when they can compete. And for now, Perez would be a decent guy. I think that would probably help the car's development. Maybe not. But also hope to maybe get some decent performances. Again, assuming that maybe Mercedes do leapfrog someone like McLaren or Alpine just because of they are Mercedes. Ferrari. Interesting. Getting into the interesting one. Oscar Piastri. And Pierre Gasly. Solid. Ferraro Rocher. Oscar Piastri, Pierre Gasly. I think that would be another really good team chemistry. They would have a little bit of time to figure things out, but I think Oscar Piastri could learn a few things from Gasly. Gasly would be happy to have Piastri as a teammate. Again, because they are a top team, maybe they do leapfrog a few people, you know, assuming they've got new staff, you know, even if, for example, the plans for the Ferrari, and in this case, a lot of the teams wouldn't have their previous cars to model off, just for reasons of competitiveness and a bit of a switcheroo, so that Max Verstappen doesn't end up in the worst car, for example, and just get sick of, you know, not doing much. Then yeah, solid, I think. Red Bull, this would be my favorite lineup, not because they're great in a sense, but because of the fun, like, interactions you would get between the two. This would be the most wholesome of the pairings. It really makes you think, like when you're competing, there's really no place for being nice, which is fair, because a lot of times, if you want to be an elite driver, you have to be ruthless. But also, that doesn't mean you can't get along with the pair, the other person. I think they're all fairly, like, good. Maybe Lando Norris and Esteban Ocon would butt heads. Maybe Nick de Vries in the second year would get a bit, you know, get a bit feisty, get a bit too competitive for Lewis Hamilton's liking. But then again, maybe that'll be Lewis Hamilton's last year. You never know. George Russell and Daniel Ricciardo could butt heads if Daniel Ricciardo feels like he's still good. Maybe doesn't fit that second drive. Also, the other thing I want to mention about AlphaTauri is that in this case, Andretti, maybe they wouldn't have. Maybe they would drop back a little, honestly, because as much as Daniel Ricciardo is a good second driver, he would be a decent second driver. I'd say that. Probably the best of the second drivers in some ways. He's not great technical. He's not great. He's not great at developing the car. Doesn't like sim work, all that. He just likes to drive. Good on him, but you know, that's developing car is part of the sport that you also have to do when you're an F1 driver. That's one of your responsibilities. It should be one of your responsibilities, but I also don't blame him for just wanting to race. That would be the ideal world. You just like, engineers, do your stuff. I'm just here to overtake people and set fastest laps. Maybe AlphaTauri falls back a bit. That's the only thing I could say. Because of that, but I've got George Russell as well, who's solid drive. So maybe they fall back a little. Poor George Russell. It'd be just George Russell's luck, wouldn't it? In a fantasy draft, he falls back. Oh, poor him. No, going back to Red Bull, Sebastian Vettel, Mick Schumacher, solid veteran who would improve the car. That would hopefully, and I spelled Schumacher wrong. That would hopefully put the car in a good position to win, so that Mick would have a good car. Again, we're thinking Red Bull is Red Bull, that might leapfrog a few of the people ahead of him. Maybe already get into the midfield. Maybe in this scenario, even though Alfa Romeo or McLaren, maybe McLaren fall a bit back, which would be sad for Fernando. But I think maybe Alfa Romeo or Haas fall a bit behind. Possibly. Maybe Alpine even falls behind, to be honest. You know. But anyways, I think Sebastian Vettel's guidance towards Mick Schumacher and the car would give them a good, like, solid pairing. I think that should... Honestly, I thought that's what Aston Martin's lineup should be. You've got the future of Mick, and you've got someone who you know will support Mick. Someone who can still win, but just a really good pairing. So I think that would be it would have been a good pairing to see. In real life, still possible, still somewhat possible, I think. But I'm gonna probably put a sort of unlikely unless they get rid of Ocon at Alpine and they decide to pick up both Vettel and Schumacher. Maybe nah. I think it would be a good pairing. I think they're putting development first. Sebastian Vettel, the car development, Mick Schumacher, the driver development. I think it wouldn't take long for Red Bull to get back to the top again with that lineup. So I think it's some very interesting some lineups. I might take a bit longer to, after this to look at them and go, oh, okay. What else can we see? Again, Alfa Romeo have that French and British team up again. We can't avoid it. George Russell, Daniel Ricciardo, they both say crikey a lot. Well, Daniel Ricciardo doesn't say crikey, but he's Australian like me, so it wouldn't be out of character. I think George Russell and Daniel Ricciardo would maybe have a few shoeies if they both got onto the podium. Yeah. I think a few that would get along as well, Yeah, no. Obviously, you've got the German pairing, which I already pointed out. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how maybe I think I did a better job at picking the pairings this time, hopefully. But I could have not done as well. I want to get feedback on this, and I don't think I'm going to get feedback in the comment section at the time of recording, around the time I release it, because I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of people watching it, sadly. But I do want to hear, maybe even what Twitter says. I'll find a way to get this out there and, get a few people's ideas. I really want to do a fantasy draft where we could get 10 people, for example, each with one team, and going, ooh, who's the best on the grid, with similar rules to this one, maybe a few in terms of what the cars would look like. So we could have Williams being the top team with the top driver in this scenario, but maybe also they take a while, similar to how in the NBA the first pick means you're still probably not the greatest, but still with Max Verstappen at the helm, I think Williams would be probably the better team, the better guy, the better team. Just maybe Logan Sargent would hold him back. I don't know. But yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that if I could get 10 people organized and get a great time for all of us. Maybe live stream it on twitch.tv, which is twitch.tv/Trip4ndF1all, where the A is a fall, just like in my name. Here, the Trip and F1all podcast. A little bit of self-promo. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Hope to do another one of these soon. Probably a mini one as well. Maybe another mini one on Daniel Ricciardo. And I think the next big episode might be predictions, but I've also got one other plan. So we'll figure it out. I was hoping I would get to record 2 episodes this weekend, because I have got the long weekend. And it's only the second day of my long weekend. Still got 2 more days. But I don't reckon I will. But we'll see. I hope to record this over the long weekend, so it's still in the, if anybody's really busting for a bit of F1 content, you know. This will be a long one. I'm sorry though. So yeah. I probably didn't follow my own rules of having only 3 minutes on the clock. A lot of explanation time though, so put it on 2 times or something. Yeah, so I'll be back soon, hopefully. Trying to keep up with the somewhat regular schedule, semi-regular schedule, but you know, life, work, all that gets in the way. But you know, F1 is my passion, so anytime I can get to talk about F1, I will. So I'll try to, if not next week, record another one in the next few weeks, maybe. I've got plans though, and I just keep on coming back with plans. This is one of my plans, and maybe we'll have to do a little alteration of this sometime again. Hopefully not. Maybe next year, possibly. Make this a regular, like the predictions is a regular. Who knows? But anyways, I hope you enjoyed. See ya.